Millionaire is heartbroken to see his son living like a male beggar in despair. Rain hammered down the slick streets of New York, blurring the glare of neon signs and stabbing headlights. Inside a glossy black luxury car, Rodrigo Roberts sat stiff-backed, his hands clenched on the velvet armrest. His expensive suit felt like armor, but today it offered no protection. His eyes, sharp and cold for so long, caught something impossible outside. The frail figure of an old man hunched against the storm, soaked and trembling on a crowded corner. The man's clothes were threadbare and stained, his hands shaking like brittle twigs, clutching a tattered paper cup, begging for change. But there was something haunting in his face. A flicker of recognition shot through Rodrigo's chest, tearing at the tight walls of pride he'd built so high. That man was Frank, his father, once a titan who built a sandwich empire from nothing, now haunting the streets dressed as a forgotten shadow. Rodrigo's passers-by threw wary glances, murmurs tracing words like miserable, lost cause, beggar. The same words Rodrigo had used to dismiss the past. His chest tightened in a sudden choke of shame and confusion. The storm outside seemed to howl in sync with his turmoil. For a heart-stopping moment, the luxurious car felt like a cage, the cold leather biting at his skin, the rain-slick streets mocking his distance from the raw grit of life. Later, at a glittering party bursting with elite voices and clinking champagne glasses, Rodrigo's smile cracked. Laughter held an unnatural edge as his mind dragged back to that soaked figure. The city glittered with affluence, but inside him a storm raged. Was he just a wealthy man wearing a mask, blind to the blood and sweat behind his fortune? Could his heart still break, or had pride calcified every inch? Dismissing the weight pressing on him, Rodrigo tried to bury the memory, until a delivery driver crossed his path, a rough-looking G. A sudden urge pulled Rodrigo into worlds he'd never touched, delivering meals to struggling families hiding their hunger beneath closed doors, meeting Missy, a tired single mother battling a broken system, fierce and fragile. Each story etched new cracks into his fortress of self. The tension snapped when a message lit up his phone, his father's voice raw and unyielding. Your life of privileges ends if you don't learn the meaning of hard work and humility. The ultimatum wasn't just a threat, it was a life-or-death challenge to his soul. Now, standing on a rain-soaked street corner much like where he first saw Frank, Rodrigo's heart hammered wild and heavy. The question clawed at him with merciless grip. Can he change? Can he be more than a millionaire lost in his own arrogance? Can he mend what's been broken? Or is he doomed to live trapped inside his gilded cage forever? The city held its breath with him. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you a... And while you're there, leave that powerful like that helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Rodrigo stood there, rain pelting his face, his heart racing. The wind whipped around him, a fierce reminder of the world beyond his luxurious cocoon. Could he really change? Was there enough time to reach out to his father, or was it too late? Just as the thought settled, a loud crash shattered the night. A car screeched to a halt nearby, tires screeching against the slick pavement. The driver jumped out, anger blaring in his voice. "What the hell? Watch where you're going!" He didn't notice the frail figure of Frank, still huddled against the wall like a forgotten relic. Rodrigo's instincts kicked in. He dashed forward, between the man and the jagged edge of the sidewalk. But just as he reached to pull Frank away, the old man's eyes flared wide, filled with a terror that mocked the storm around them. "No!" Frank shouted, his voice like gravel. "Rodrigo, don't!" But it was too late. The driver, fueled by rage, lunged forward, shoving Frank aside. The old man tumbled to the ground, his paper cup spilling change that danced across the pavement, glimmering like lost dreams under the streetlights. Rodrigo's heart dropped. In an instant, the driver turned to Rodrigo, face twisted in confusion. "You know this beggar?" The word hung heavy, slicing through Rodrigo's emotions. It was a revelation that stuck like a thorn. "Seriously? What's wrong with you?" Rodrigo barely heard it. In that moment, all he could see was his father, reduced to nothing in front of him. "Stop!" Rodrigo shouted, his voice cracking with disbelief. "He's my dad!" Shockwaves rippled through the bystanders. You could feel their judgment piercing the air. Gasps erupted, faces altered with pity and disdain, whispers circling like vultures, ready to descend. "The millionaire's father is a beggar? How could he let this happen?" They tore at him, those fragmented lines like slashes carving into his dignity. But then, something else flickered in Frank's eyes. A flash of determination, a lifetime of hidden resilience. "Rodrigo, listen to me. You can't protect me." His voice trembled with urgency. "I fell for a reason. Sometimes you need to lose everything to find out who you really are. I'm not the man I used to be, and neither are you." The ground seemed to shift beneath Rodrigo's feet. Everything he thought he understood shattered. It wasn't just about wealth or humility. It was about the battle within. And there it was, the weight of familial scars laid bare. "Get up, please," Rodrigo whispered, reaching down, trembling. "Let's go home." But Frank shook his head, shattering the hope blooming in Rodrigo's chest. His father's gaze hardened, raw and unyielding. "Home? This is where I found my truth, son. I had to let go of the past and the company that consumed me. Your inheritance? It means nothing if you don't own it, if you don't earn it." Another rumble of thunder rolled through, matching the turmoil in Rodrigo's soul. Behind him, the crowd whispered secrets that felt invasive, exposing wounds he'd kept hidden beneath wealth and success. And then, out of nowhere, a siren wailed in the distance, slicing through the night. For a heartbeat, time seemed suspended, the rain a curtain separating their worlds. Suddenly, Frank winced, clutching his chest. "Rodrigo, Heart racing, Rodrigo reached out, but before he could react, Frank collapsed. Panic flooded his senses. The siren grew louder, echoing the urgent shrieks of the crowd. Hands reached down as the scene erupted into chaos, the world spinning, emotions tumbling like leaves in a storm. Rodrigo's heart was a wild beat, fear clawing at his throat. Was this the moment his life would change forever? Or an end he would never see coming? The city buzzed around him, and he could barely breathe. All he knew was that everything he thought he knew had just unraveled, and nothing would ever be the same again. Rodrigo's heart pounded like a drum in his chest. Panic and confusion swirled around him as he leaned down, helpless, watching his father struggle. Frank lay on the rain-slicked pavement, gasping for breath, clutching his chest as his eyes searched Rodrigo's face. The world around them faded, a backdrop to the storm unfolding between father and son. "Rodrigo, it's so important," Frank wheezed, his voice barely above a whisper. But before he could finish, chaos erupted. The crowd stirred, a wave of gasps and murmurs blending into a tempest of judgment. "What's happening? Is he okay? Someone call 911. Rodrigo's hands trembled as he reached for his father, a desperate plea written across his face. But in that moment, everything shattered. A blinding flash lit up the night. A street lamp flickered violently, then exploded in a shower of sparks, sending shards of glass raining down like broken dreams. The panic escalated as people screamed, scattering in every direction, frantically moving away from the chaos. As if it were a scene from a nightmare, Rodrigo barely registered the sudden horror before him. A black SUV careened down the street, headlights blinding, tires screeching against the slick pavement. "Move!" he screamed, adrenaline pumping through his veins. He pushed through the throng, heart racing, as the truck skidded toward them, a beast bearing down, the sound of metal twisting, piercing the cacophony. But just as Rodrigo reached for his father, trying to pull him out of harm's way, there was a sudden jolt, an unimaginable moment. Bam! The impact sent a shockwave through the air, a deafening collision as the SUV slammed into the crowd. Bodies were thrown, chaos reigned, and everything seemed to freeze. Time suspended in disbelief, Rodrigo's thoughts spiraled as he instinctively lunged, but it wasn't enough. A flash of a face in the back seat caught his eye. It was Thomas, his childhood friend, the one who had vanished years ago, the one who had been tied to whispers of scandals, the one whose family had deep ties to the very empire Frank had built. Why? Rodrigo's voice was choked, disbelieving. Why would you? But the chaos consumed the moment. Sirens blared, cutting through the air. Urgency tattooed across every face. People rushed toward the wreckage, cries for help mixing with panicked shouts. Frank gasped again, fingers clawing the slick ground, desperately trying to pull himself up. "Rodrigo, don't get too close. It's not what it seems." His eyes burned into Rodrigo's, intense and filled with an emotion so rich it threatened to drown them both. Rodrigo staggered back, the revelation hitting him like a freight train. Everything he thought he understood, the wealth, the power, the family legacy, it all spiraled away. "I had to lose everything to find my truth," Frank had said. Now, the truth was surfacing, and it was murky, tangled with betrayal and secrets he never knew existed. Amidst the pandemonium, Rodrigo felt the ground grip him, despair clawing at his throat. What had really happened to his family? Why was Thomas there? This wasn't just a collision. It was the start of something darker, a hurricane threatening to expose what lay buried beneath years of pretense. As he stumbled back, a fire ignited in Rodrigo's chest, fueled by shock and a desperate need for answers. The rain beat against him, the city alive with chaos, but he was only focused on one thing now: unearthing the truth. The questions clawed at him, unraveling every certainty. His father was alive, but what lay ahead was a game-changer, the storm brewing that would reshape their lives forever. The city hummed with a frantic buzz. And he wondered, what had they really lost? What would it take to uncover the secrets buried in their past? As thunder rumbled overhead, he knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. Rodrigo stood frozen, the cacophony swirling like a storm around him as he watched Frank struggle on the pavement. Each ragged breath from his father felt like a knife cutting deeper into his heart. The chaos around them faded, the world narrowing down to this moment. This connection slowly unraveling. But just as a flicker of hope sparked within him, the screeching sirens grew louder, slicing through their shared despair. And then everything changed. From the corner of his eye, Rodrigo caught movement. A flash of red broke through the crowd, a figure racing toward them. It was a young woman, her face twisted in panic as she stumbled on the slick ground. Jared, his former business rival, the one person Rodrigo had never expected to see here, now rushing toward the chaos. "Get back!" he shouted, urgency flooding his voice, but it was too late. In a wild swoop, Jared lunged past the onlookers, reaching for Frank just as he fell. Their bodies collided, and chaos erupted anew. But it wasn't the collision that set Rodrigo's heart crashing into the depths of despair. It was the scream that followed. "No!" Frank's voice tore through the air, frantic. "Stay away from me!" The crowd gasped, a wave of disbelief cascading through them. The panic, the fear. It swept over him like a dark tide. But it was the look in Frank's eyes that sent shivers down Rodrigo's spine, like seeing a ghost. This wasn't just pain. This was betrayal. Beneath the helplessness, beneath the storm, There was something lurking deep within. Jared stumbled back, confusion painting his features. "What are you talking about? I'm trying to help." The words were lost in the commotion, swallowed by a swell of whispers and gasps. But Frank's eyes narrowed, shimmering like glass. "You," he spat, raw hurt mingling with fierce clarity. "You don't understand, do you? You've been a part of this, a part of everything that went wrong." Rodrigo's heart dropped. What was happening? He glanced between them, the shadows of unspoken histories weaving through the air. Memories flashed, a younger Rodrigo, ambitious and headstrong, always in Jared's shadow, fighting for his father's approval. But this was something else. "Frank, stop!" Rodrigo shouted, desperation inching into his voice. "What do you mean?" But before Frank could respond, a sudden stillness enveloped them. The chaos faded, the rain slowed, and all Rodrigo could hear was the frantic pounding of his heart. And then, as if the universe sought to collapse time itself, a siren blared, drawing eyes toward the scene. It was then the truth unfurled. A figure stepped from the shadows, cloaked in mist and darkness, emerging from the wreckage. "You don't even know," the figure called out, voice echoing with a chilling familiarity. "You never knew why I was gone, who I truly am." Rodrigo's stomach twisted, fear rooting him to the spot. He squinted, the outline sharpening against the glow of streetlights. The face, sharp, angry, yet achingly familiar. His long-lost brother, David. The secret kept hidden for years, buried beneath lies and shame. "David?" The word slipped from Rodrigo's lips like a prayer. Anger and fear, disbelief and a twisted sort of hope tangled within him. "I've been waiting for this moment," David said, a flicker of something dark dancing in his eyes, "to show you all the secrets of our family and watch you burn." Rodrigo shook his head, disbelief spiraling. The world around him came charging back, the crowd's judgment heavy in the air, whispers puncturing the moment. "Rodrigo, don't listen to him." "It's a trap!" Frank shouted, panic threading his voice, but the storm was just beginning. As David stepped closer, a crack of thunder erupted overhead, drowning out the world. In that instant, surrounded by shattering truths and haunting revelations, everything Rodrigo thought he knew shattered. The ties that bound them all, now fraying at the seams. What had he stumbled into? As he looked from Frank to David, the weight of betrayal surged, deepening each wound. Could he ever come to terms with who they really were? And as the sirens wailed into the chaos of the night, a single question clawed at him. Would he be able to uncover all the secrets before it was too late? Rodrigo's heart pounded like a drum in his chest, the chaos swirling harder with every strained breath. He looked between Frank and David, the weight of unsaid words thick in the air, smothering any hope left in the fraying fabric of their family. "David, how could you?" The words escaped him, trembling with disbelief, vulnerability laid bare. David stepped closer, eyes dark and challenging. "You think I'm the enemy?" His voice cut through the noise, low and chilling. "You've never known the whole story, Rodrigo. You think Frank lost his way? This," he gestured to the chaos, the debris around them. "This is just the tip of the iceberg." Another bolt of thunder cracked overhead, deepening the storm brewing between brothers. Frank's breath came in sharp gasps as he struggled to pull himself up. "Rodrigo, listen to me. He's lying. You don't know him." But the words hung heavy, caught between desperation and anger. David laughed, a dark melody that sent shivers down Rodrigo's spine. "No, father. He's the one lying. This heroic image you've crafted won't keep you safe forever." Rodrigo glanced at the gathered crowd, eyes wide, faces a mix of concern and judgment. He was the millionaire son of a beggar, but worse still, a man torn between what he had and the truth he had never wanted to face. A sudden shout echoed, cutting through the tension. "Look out!" Rodrigo turned just in time to see another vehicle roaring down the street, headlights blind like a predator hungry for chaos. "No, no, no!" He lunged instinctively, reaching for Frank, for David, for anyone who might still be standing. The vehicle collided with a parked car, metal screaming against metal, and in a heartbeat, everything erupted into chaos. The crowd scattered, screams filled the air, lost to the thunder. But one thing stood out in all the madness, a flash of something in the back seat of the speeding car. A silhouette. And there, through the rain, a figure rose from the wreckage. It wasn't just a random bystander. Every eye fell upon it as a gasp ripped through the crowd. Rodrigo squinted, the world moving in slow motion, and in that moment, time stilled. "I've been waiting for this." The voice was unmistakable. "Mom?" His mother stood before him, but this was not the soft, loving woman who had raised him. No, this was someone different, a spirit of rage and betrayal. Her eyes locked onto David, and the hate simmered like boiling water. "Mom, how?" The word broke on his tongue, disbelief crashing through him like a wave. "I thought you were gone." "I was never gone, Rodrigo," she shouted, voice cutting through the storm. "I was running from your father's lies, the empire he built on secrets and blood." All at once, it clicked. The whispers, the shadows, the stories buried in the family shrine. Everything he had known, everything he had dismissed. Frank's eyes widened, horror stretching across his face. "No, Claire." But her gaze was filled with resolve. "Don't you dare speak to me. You built your empire on my sacrifice, on ruining your own flesh and blood. You turned your back on me, on us." The crowd buzzed, the judgmental glances shifting, whispers threading through the rain-slicked air. The tension was electric. Each person held their breath, waiting for the storm to break. Rodrigo was lost in a whirlwind. He had thought he knew the story, thought the past could be buried. But here it was, raw, alive, and screaming for attention. "What are you saying?" he breathed, each word tasting of betrayal. "Was this all a lie?" "Everything you've believed," Claire shot, anger in her voice, "is a carefully woven tapestry of deception. David was born out of something beautiful, but Frank turned it into a nightmare." Rodrigo staggered back, stunned. The storm raged on, but in that moment, all he saw was the shredding of his life's narrative. His identity, his family tree, his reality twisted into something horrifying. Could he believe his mother? Could he trust her? Or was this yet another layer of the lies he was entangled in? The collision of truths loomed heavy, and the sirens that blared in the distance felt more ominous than ever. As silence fell in the eye of the storm, Rodrigo felt an overwhelming desire to know more. What had really happened to tear them apart? What was buried beneath years of secrets? "Mom, what happened?" The plea escaped before he realized, desperate and raw. And just like that, the city held its breath, waiting for her answer. The rain washed over them, but inside, a fire burned brighter than ever, a wildfire of history and revelations waiting to ignite. Would this storm unveil everything? Or was there more darkness lurking in the shadows, just beyond reach? Rodrigo felt the storm of emotions swirling around him as his mother's revelation hung thick in the air. He wanted to scream, to run, to grasp onto something, anything, to anchor him. "What happened?" he repeated, desperation clawing at his throat. Claire took a step forward, her voice cracking with the weight of hurt. "Our family was never what you thought. This empire your father built, it's cursed. Secrets twisted into lies that turned us into enemies." But as she spoke, something shifted in the air, electric and charged. It felt like the calm, before a violent storm. Rodrigo's chest tightened, the urge to protect and discover battling within him. Frank struggled to rise, but the panic in his eyes told Rodrigo he wasn't the only one who sensed it. "Claire, stop!" Frank shouted, alarm etched deep in his features. Don't tell him that!" For just a heartbeat, Rodrigo hesitated, caught between two worlds, the one he knew and the one unraveling before him. He turned to David, who stood back, an expression of deep-seated resentment mingling with something darker. "You think this is the end, don't you?" David intoned, voice low and chilling. "You're just at the beginning." Before anyone could respond, the ground trembled beneath them, a violent vibration that shook even the steadfast buildings lining the street. Rodrigo stumbled, his pulse racing as the shriek of metal on metal echoed from the wrecked SUV behind them. Instinctively, his eyes darted to the chaos, heart hammering in sync with the intensity of the moment. And then it happened. A blinding flash of light burst from the SUV, engulfing the area in a fierce, searing glow. A collective gasp erupted from the crowd as the air filled with smoke and confusion. "What is happening?" people shouted, urgency ricocheting through the chaos. Through the haze, two shadows emerged, figures cloaked in smoke, charging from the wreckage like phantoms from a nightmare. Rodrigo's heart dropped as clarity struck. This was not just a freak accident. The figures moved with purpose, and one of them lunged toward Claire, a wild look in her eyes. "Mom, get back!" Rodrigo shouted, bewildered as he watched the chaos unfold. "Rodrigo!" Claire yelled, panic rising in her voice, but it was too late. In a flash, the figure seized her arm, dragging her away from the altercation. She shouted, "No, let me go!" Time seemed to stretch as the crowd stood frozen, the rain hammering down, blurring vision. Another voice broke through the air, a voice Rodrigo had never expected to hear again. "The truth must come out!" Eyes widened. It was Clara, a childhood friend long lost, launching into the light, her determined stance powerful as she stood before David. "You need to confront them, David. You know what we did, and it's time everyone found out." The revelation slammed through Rodrigo like a punch. Clara, involved? Secrets tangled deeper than he'd imagined. The world began to tilt. Every connection he thought he understood splintered and rearranged. "No, this couldn't be happening." "I don't understand," Rodrigo pleaded, panic rising in his chest. "You all knew?" But in that moment of chaotic revelation, something else exploded. A second blinding flash erupted as another vehicle careened out of control. Barreling down the street with a deafening roar, a vehicle branded with the familiar crest of Frank's past empire, an old logo that had long been thought buried. A heart-stopping realization washed over him. The truth was unraveling, but it came with shockwaves that no one was prepared for. The empire he had always known was collapsing, but beneath it lay a far darker history, a spun web of betrayal, violence, and secrets that might claim them all. As the van screeched to a halt in the middle of the turmoil, Rodrigo felt his gut twist. Voices rose in terror and urgency, the crowd's collective shock palpable. And then, out of the vehicle, stepped a figure cloaked in darkness. Shrouded and menacing, this wasn't just chaos, it was orchestrated. "It's time to end this, once and for all," the figure declared. Rodrigo froze, the world around him spinning faster. This wasn't just about a broken family, this was war. A battle of revelations that had only begun. As he stood grappling with the chaos and the weight of untold truths, one question shadowed everything. Who could truly be trusted now? Rodrigo felt the air thicken, the tension humming like a live wire. Claire stood defiant, rage burning in her eyes as she faced Frank. But Rodrigo's gaze was locked onto David. Questions spun like a cyclone in his mind, but he couldn't grasp them. The storm around them raged on, rain pelting down relentlessly, each drop feeling like a judgment, each breath heavy with uncertainty. "Enough!" David yelled, voice slicing through the chaos. "You think you understand this family? You don't know the half of it." Frank gasped, pulling himself up, his terror palpable. "Stay away from your brother. Don't you dare drag him into this." Tension hung in the air like thick smoke, swirling around them, tainted with decades of resentment and betrayal. But just as the truth hovered on the tip of tongues, the world shifted again. A loud bang erupted from the SUV, echoing against the steel and glass of the New York skyline. The vehicle began to shake, rattling like a caged beast. Fear seeped through the crowd, tightening like a vice. People recoiled, eyes widening in confusion. "Get back!" Rodrigo yelled, instincts kicking in, pushing through the throng towards the commotion. But curiosity and terror held everyone frozen. Then it happened, a window shattered, glass exploding outward in a sparkling rain. "What the?" someone cried out, but the question faded as a figure emerged from the wreckage, silhouetted against the chaos. Rodrigo's pulse quickened. It was a woman, her expression fierce, hair wild like a tempest. And then the identity seared through him, revealing a truth he'd never comprehended. "Evelyn," he gasped. His childhood nanny, the one who had vanished without a word all those years ago, stepping out of darkness, as if the years had folded into one constant moment. Anger and confusion collided in him. "Why are you here?" Her eyes caught his, filled with a mix of fiery determination and sorrow. "I came for you, Rodrigo. There's so much you don't know, so much I've kept hidden." Before he could respond, a loud crack echoed, another flash of energy coursing through the air. "No!" Frank yelled, pushing forward. But it was too late. Evelyn raised her hands, and an electric spark surged from her fingertips. "You think this is just about family secrets? Everyone here is tied to an old debt, a reckoning that's finally arrived." The energy pulsing through the air felt sharp, like static before a storm. David's face twisted in disbelief. "You're just playing mind games," he spat, but uncertainty danced in his eyes. "Mind games?" Evelyn echoed, stepping closer, each movement fluid yet commanding. "No, David, this is about the choices we made. The choices your parents made long before either of you were born." A low rumble echoed from within the SUV, a harsh hum vibrating the ground beneath them. Rodrigo's heart raced, reality fracturing with each revelation. "What do you mean?" he shot back, the layers of his world peeling away with every breath. Evelyn straightened, locking eyes with Frank. "You thought you could bury it all, every secret, every sin, but they're rising like ghosts." In that instant, the air erupted anew. A blinding flash engulfed them. A weighty presence crashing into the scene. The crowd shrieked, retreating, fear infectious. When the light dissipated, there was a figure standing at the front of the SUV. A man, sharply dressed, eyes like ice, face hauntingly familiar. "You've all forgotten the one binding force, the true architect of your suffering." Who are you?" Rodrigo stammered, fear slicing through him. The man smiled, an eerie, predatory grin. "Your uncle, Rodrigo. Your family's darker half, the secret that changes everything." A jolt of shock struck him right in the gut. "No, it can't be." And suddenly, as the truth loomed, crumbling every ounce of certainty, Rodrigo had one thought. Who was he really? And how deep did the roots of betrayal run? The ground trembled as he and the crowd stood on the edge of calamity, caught between the storm of revelations that would forever reshape their lives. Rodrigo felt the air thicken, the tension humming like a live wire. Claire stood defiant, rage burning in her eyes as she faced Frank. But Rodrigo's gaze was locked onto David. Questions spun like a cyclone in his mind, but he couldn't grasp them. The storm around them raged on, rain pelting down relentlessly, each drop feeling like a judgment, each breath heavy with uncertainty. "Enough!" David yelled, voice slicing through the chaos. "You think you understand this family? You don't know the half of it." Frank gasped, pulling himself up, terror etched across his features. "Stay away from your brother. Don't you dare drag him into this." Tension hung in the air like thick smoke, swirling around them, tainted with decades of resentment and betrayal. But just as the truth hovered on the tip of tongues, the world shifted again. A loud bang erupted from the SUV, echoing against the steel and glass of the New York skyline. The vehicle began to shake, rattling like a caged beast. Fear seeped through the crowd, tightening like a vice. People recoiled, eyes widening in confusion. "Get back!" Rodrigo yelled, pushing through the throng, adrenaline kicking in. But curiosity and terror held everyone frozen. Then it happened. A window shattered, glass exploding outward in a sparkling rain. "What the?" someone cried out, but their voice faded as a figure emerged from the wreckage, silhouetted against the chaos. Rodrigo's heart dropped. It was a woman, feral and fierce, and then he saw her face. "Evelyn," he gasped. His childhood nanny, stepping out of darkness as if time had folded back on itself. "Rodrigo!" she shouted above the din, the desperation in her voice slicing through him. "To save yourself, you must confront him. He holds the key." "Wait, what do you mean?" He took a step back, panic rising. "Confront who?" Suddenly the ground trembled with a violent vibration, rattling everyone where they stood. It felt like an earthquake, disorienting. The crowd gasped as dizzying chaos unfurled. And then, bam! Another blinding flash erupted from the SUV, more intense this time. A wave of heat surged forward, knocking Rodrigo off his feet. His heart raced, and for a moment, everything became a blur of confusion and fear. "Get out of there!" Frank screamed, struggling to rise. But before anyone could react, the SUV erupted in flames. A fiery plume reached high into the stormy sky, illuminating the night with an eerie glow. Panic spread through the crowd. People screamed, and chaos erupted as they pushed and shoved to escape. But then, something surreal happened. From the center of that fire, a figure emerged, unscathed, eyes burning with fury, and a smirk that chilled Rodrigo's blood. It was David, alive and somehow triumphant amidst the chaos. The revelation struck like lightning. "David?" Rodrigo shouted, gripping the asphalt, disbelief igniting every nerve. "You're supposed to be dead?" "No, brother, just reborn," David shot back, voice booming above the din, a twisted glee radiating from him. "I played the part you all wanted, the lost little brother. But the truth? I've been the puppet master this whole time." Rodrigo staggered back, shock coursing through him. The world felt like it was spinning, reality shifting beneath his feet. "What are you talking about?" With a flick of his wrist, David gestured towards Evelyn. "I needed her out of the way. She kept too many secrets. Your loyalty to family is a weakness, Rodrigo." His gaze zeroed in, relentless, "and I will strip it all away." The crowd erupted into chaos, panic spilling from every corner. Faces twisted in horror, whispers spiraled out, a cacophony of confusion. The questions screamed in Rodrigo's head, but then came the most shocking twist of all. "I'm the true heir of the empire. Rodrigo, you were just the pawn, the one they groomed because I was too troubled. But guess what? I've come to collect my dues, and you're nothing but a footnote in my story." Stunned silence engulfed Rodrigo. Questions piled like weight on his chest, suffocating him. All those years he'd thought he understood his family, that he had the keys, and it turned out he was living someone else's narrative. Time stood still, his thoughts spiraled in chaos, and one question clawed to the surface. What had he really walked into? As David stepped fully into the light, the fire flickering behind him, like freedom and imprisonment, rolled into one. Rodrigo felt the crushing weight of shattered trust. How deep did this web go? Could all he had ever known truly be a lie? The storm raged on, and in that moment, a new battle loomed. Not just for his family's legacy, but for his very identity. Desperation surged within, the night stretching into shadows of uncertainty, leaving him wondering what would come next in this unfolding chaos. Rodrigo felt the air thicken, the tension humming like a... Claire stood defiant, rage burning in her eyes as she faced Frank, but Rodrigo's gaze was locked onto David. Questions spun like a cyclone in his mind, but he couldn't grasp them. The storm around them raged on, rain pelting down relentlessly, each drop feeling like a judgment, each breath heavy with uncertainty. "Enough," David yelled, voice slicing through the chaos. "You think you understand this family? You don't know the half of it." Frank gasped, pulling himself up. Terror etched across his features. "Stay away from your brother. Don't you dare drag him into this." Tension hung in the air like thick smoke, swirling around them, tainted with decades of resentment and betrayal. But just as the truth hovered on the tip of tongues, the world shifted again. A loud bang erupted from the SUV, echoing against the steel and glass of the New York skyline. The vehicle began to shake, rattling like a caged beast. Fear seeped through the crowd, tightening like a vice. People recoiled, eyes widening in confusion. "Get back!" Rodrigo yelled, pushing through the throng, adrenaline kicking in. But curiosity and terror held everyone frozen. Then it happened. A window shattered, glass exploding outward in a sparkling rain. "What the?" someone cried out, but their voice faded as a figure emerged from the wreckage, silhouetted against the chaos. Rodrigo's heart dropped. It was a woman, feral and fierce, and then he saw her face. "Evelyn!" he gasped, his childhood nanny, stepping out of darkness like time had folded back on itself. "Rodrigo!" she shouted above the din, the desperation in her voice slicing through him. "To save yourself, you must confront him. He holds the key." "Wait, what do you mean?" He took a step back, panic rising. "Confront who?" Suddenly the ground trembled with a violent vibration, rattling everyone where they stood. It felt like an earthquake, disorienting. The crowd gasped as dizzying chaos unfurled. And then, bam! Another blinding flash erupted from the SUV, more intense this time. A wave of heat surged forward, knocking Rodrigo off his feet. His heart raced, and for a moment, everything became a blur of confusion and fear. "Get out of there!" Frank screamed, struggling to rise. But before anyone could react, the SUV erupted in flames. A fiery plume reached high into the stormy sky, illuminating the night with an eerie glow. Panic spread through the crowd. People screamed, and chaos erupted as they pushed and shoved to escape. But then, something surreal happened. From the center of that fire, a figure emerged, unscathed, eyes burning with fury, and a smirk that chilled Rodrigo's blood. It was David, alive and somehow triumphant amidst the chaos. The revelation struck like lightning. "David?" Rodrigo shouted, gripping the asphalt, disbelief igniting every nerve. "You're supposed to be... dead?" "No, brother. Just reborn," David shot back, voice booming above the din, a twisted glee radiating from him. "I played the part you all wanted, the lost little brother. But the truth? I've been the puppet master this whole time." Rodrigo staggered back, shock coursing through him. The world felt like it was spinning, reality shifting beneath his feet. "What are you talking about?" With a flick of his wrist, David gestured towards Evelyn. "I needed her out of the way. She kept too many secrets. Your loyalty to family is a weakness, Rodrigo. His gaze zeroed in, relentless, and I will strip it all away. The crowd erupted into chaos, panic spilling from every corner. Faces twisted in horror, whispers spiraled out, a cacophony of confusion. The questions screamed in Rodrigo's head. But then came the most shocking twist of all. From behind David, a door swung open on another vehicle that had arrived amidst the flames. A figure stepped out, cloaked and hidden within the shadows, the outline familiar, yet grotesquely different. Rodrigo squinted. Could it be? But as the mist cleared, the identity pierced through him like a knife. "Mom?" he breathed, confusion and recognition crashing around him. It couldn't be. She had vanished years ago. The woman stepped forward, hair wild, eyes blazing. "Rodrigo, you need to understand. I'm the one who set this in motion." Gasps echoed through the crowd. "What?" he rasped, disbelief flooding his voice. "What do you mean?" "Everything you think you know about our family. It's a facade. A carefully constructed illusion. I didn't just run away. I hid the truth from you all, and now it's time to face the consequences." Rodrigo felt his stomach drop. The rain fell harder, pounding down like the weight of all her words. "No, you're lying." But the look in her eyes held no warmth. "I'm not. The scars you bear. I created them." The crowd buzzed with indignation. People exchanged shocked looks, horror staining their faces. Someone murmured, "This can't be happening." Time froze. Rodrigo stood, drenched in disbelief, torn between love and loathing. The rising tide of chaos loomed, shifting everything beneath him. Was he facing the real monster of his childhood, or had she always been the victim of something darker? The truth hung there, heavy and perilous, a noose tightening around his throat. As the sirens wailed and reality seemed to unravel, Rodrigo was left standing at the precipice of uncertainty, desperate for clarity, but fearing the truth more than anything else. The storm was far from over, and the shadows grew darker still. Rodrigo felt every heartbeat echoing in his chest. His mother stood before him, her rage simmering, but her eyes filled with a pleading warmth. "Rodrigo, listen," Claire implored, reaching out to him, her voice cutting through the chaos. "The past is como a monster we created. We must face it together." The crowd murmured, some whispering in disbelief, as they watched the family unravel under the weight of years lost. "You let him manipulate you," David spat, venom lacing his words. As the tension climbed, Rodrigo felt a tight knot of emotion blossom in his throat. "Manipulate? You were supposed to be my brother." "Stop." Frank suddenly pushed himself in front of Claire, a wild look in his eyes. "Rodrigo, she's right. The truth is twisted, stitched up in pain. You can't let them tear us apart." Rage boiled in his veins. "But who can I trust? You've all lied." Amid the swirling storm of emotions, Evelyn stepped toward him. Her eyes were fierce, unyielding in their purpose. "You must choose, Rodrigo. Break the cycle or join David in a dark legacy. This is your moment." Thunder echoed overhead, as if the heavens themselves were protesting. Rain lashed down, soaking them all. In that moment, clarity washed over him. Rodrigo turned to David, the man who had once been his brother. "You've created this chaos for your own gain. This empire, our family, it shouldn't be ruled by secrets." For a heartbeat, silence wrapped around them. David's expression shifted, flickering with uncertainty but still fierce. "You're just afraid. Afraid to face the truth." As the rain fell harder, Rodrigo swallowed the lump in his throat. "We were family once. We can find a way through this. Together, we can rewrite our fate." But the shadows of doubt loomed large. David smirked, shaking his head. "It's too late for that." Suddenly, a cry erupted from the crowd. "Look out! A flash caught Rodrigo's attention, a figure bursting through the chaos. Jared, pushing his way forward, eyes wild with concern. "Rodrigo, there's no time. You need to get everyone to safety." A fire blazed in Rodrigo's chest, quickening his pulse. "You're right." He grabbed Frank's shoulder, pulling him close, urgency flooding him. "This family needs to unite, not divide." Claire stepped beside him, fiercely determined. "We face the truth together or lose everything." The crowd buzzed nervously, each face reflecting fear, but beneath it, a flicker of hope flickered. With a newfound strength, Rodrigo yelled, "Everyone, the truth is here. It's not the end, it's a beginning." As they turned to confront their past, the fire behind them began to fade. The shadows of betrayal lifted, leaving only the raw light of honesty. David hesitated, the anger in his eyes softening just a bit before slipping completely. "Family should mean something," Rodrigo said softly, letting the truth seep into the air, letting them all feel its weight. But just as the atmosphere shifted, a siren wailed in the distance, echoing through the streets. The storm raged on, but instead of fear, it brought clarity. Who we are matters. We can be more than our scars. As the realities of their past began to fade, the family began to take tentative steps toward one another. But doubts lingered, unaddressed issues hung heavy, and then darkness loomed once more. David's eyes darkened with uncertainty. What if we can't truly change? But Rodrigo could feel the movement in his heart. We fight for it, and we take it one moment at a time. As rain began to ease, a new dawn broke on the horizon. What lay ahead was unknown. Yet strength was building and clarity emerged through the clouds. They might never know the absolute truth of their family's past, but the future was theirs to create. Closing one chapter could open another. And just as they took that first step forward, a shadow flickered at the corner of Rodrigo's vision. A glimmer of hope, but of danger. Lingering in the distance. You must subscribe now to the channel so as not to miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this journey with us. Your support is everything.